Panic shoppers picking shelves clean, stores closing early just so they can restock shelves, restaurants limited to just carry-out. Coronavirus fears have Americans worrying about the once unthinkable. Could it soon be hard to find food in the U.S.?
Hi folks, this is Tony for AMinuteToMidnight.com with a short video update today. The coronavirus obviously is taking everyone's thoughts. It's the centre of all news pretty much. As I'm doing this video now, 927,980 cases have been reported, and that has led to 46,490 deaths. And the daily jump in some countries, particularly the US, has been massive, 660 new deaths, and it's up to 211,000 cases. So whilst that is big and it's scary, I think it's actually going to probably be of lesser significance than the economic collapse that I think will follow this. And in this short update, I want to show you why I believe that food shortages are coming, and that this is probably the beginning of a very severe economic depression and maybe a complete economic collapse. And so even though many of us are under lockdown and the amount of preparations we can do is limited, I want to encourage people to do whatever they can to provide for themselves, not just with a few weeks in mind, but longer if possible. In an article titled 49% of US companies expect layoffs in the next 3 months as unemployment heads to Great Depression levels. Writing in the article, Michael Snyder says, if the US economy remains in shutdown mode for the next several months, we are going to witness layoffs like we've never seen before in US history. Of course, what we have already witnessed is difficult to believe. Last week, more than 3.2 million Americans filed initial claims for unemployment benefits, and that was more than 4 times higher than the previous all-time record. This week, another massive surge is expected, and we will continue to see lots more layoffs for as long as the pandemic persists. It is going to be a very challenging time for this country as a whole, because we haven't seen anything like this since the Great Depression of the 1930s. Also, the St. Louis Fed is projecting that we will soon see a 32% unemployment rate. And that's America, but of course the rest of the world is going to be under much the same. Scientists are warning that there could be multiple waves during this pandemic, and fear of this coronavirus is going to persist for a very long time to come. And now that all of the economic bubbles are starting to burst, experts such as Egon von Greyerz are convinced that there will be no recovery at all. This is quoting von Greyerz. No one should believe for one moment that once CV is gone, we will experience a V-shaped recovery. There will be no V, there will be no U, and nor will we see a hockey stick recovery. What few people understand, including the so-called experts, is that there will be no recovery at all. An extremely rapid decline of the world economy has just started and will be devastating in the next 6 to 12 months, whether CV ends soon or not. In another article titled Supplies are starting to get really tight nationwide as food distribution systems break down, Michael Snyder says, all across America, store shelves are emptying and people are becoming increasingly frustrated because they can't get their hands on needed supplies. Most Americans are blaming hoarders for the current mess, but it is actually much more complicated than that. Normally, Americans get a lot of their food from restaurants. In fact, during normal times, 36% of all Americans eat at a fast food restaurant on any given day. But now that approximately 75% of the US is under some sort of shelter-in-place order and most of our restaurants have shut down, things have completely changed. Suddenly our grocery stores are becoming flooded with unexpected traffic, and many people are buying far more than usual in anticipation of a long pandemic. Unfortunately, our food distribution systems were not designed to handle this sort of surge, and things are really starting to get crazy out there. Michael outlines a number of reasons why the food shortages will occur. And of course, there's also the derivatives market, which if that implodes, well, then everything will break down, and it could well do so. But the purpose of this particular broadcast today is not to deal with those things so much, or to explain how this all fits in with the New World Order plans and the Georgia Guidestones, etc. What I want to do is just encourage people to make preparations as best as they can now. You would do well to get whatever long-term storage food that you can while you can, as well as your short-term stuff you use every day, and try not to use the long-term stuff, but to hold it for later if possible.
Officials with Morton Williams supermarkets in New York say traffic in their stores is up 300 to 400%. Online grocery delivery service Instacart says it saw its highest customer demand in the company's history this past weekend, with customers downloading the app as much as 4 times the normal rate.
And also, if you are able to grow some of your own food, think about how you can do that and put it into place now while the chance is there. Particularly in spring in the Northern Hemisphere, it's a great time to start growing things. It is getting difficult to get seeds and to find some vegetables and fruits to plant, but if you think it's bad now, it's only going to get worse. So I encourage people to do it now, to get a hold of bags of wheat and buckwheat and so on if you can too.
On Sunday, the president spoke by phone with more than 24 grocery store and supply chain executives.
We had a long conversation with them, and they're going to work 24 hours around the clock, keeping their stores stocked.
The problem isn't a shortage. Warehouses are full of non-perishable foods, enough to last for months. But healthcare and consumer industry groups are sounding the alarm. The supply chain could break down as more and more Americans stay home or fall ill, leaving fewer and fewer workers able to make, process, pack, and deliver. And that's not all. Groups representing such household names as Clorox, Procter & Gamble, and Pepsi fear other countries cutting off exports to the U.S. in order to keep supplies for their own sick populations. India, a major supplier of many drug ingredients to the U.S., has already limited exports of the painkiller acetaminophen. Germany has banned the export of protective equipment like masks, gloves, and suits.
And while at the moment supermarket shelves tend to be clearing fairly quickly, one thing I have noticed is that some items that are very useful are not being bought up so much. So use a critical eye when you're in the supermarket and get the things that could last well that are not being sold out quickly, and grab as many of them as you're allowed.
Meanwhile, food banks and food pantries are drafting emergency coronavirus response plans as officials worry the hunger safety net for a whole population of Americans could soon be overwhelmed.
And I know that we as Christians expect that God will provide for us, and I believe that He does. But He also has given us common sense and foresight of what's coming, and I believe it's time to put into action now, not to get into fear and panic. But if you do nothing now and the system breaks down, I can assure you fear and panic will then become a part of your life. So try and do something about it now while you still can.
You don't have to buy so much. Take it easy. Just relax.
If the global financial system totally breaks down and transport with it, then we could conceivably see a scenario where the 1930s Great Depression could seem like a picnic. I really don't want to see that happen, but I think we should be preparing for the worst while still hoping for the best and trusting God in all of it. Just do what you can now, because the better prepared you are, the better you will deal with the worst case scenarios. That's all I'm going to say today. God bless. Do stay safe, and we should be back with more videos in the near future, God willing.